This is a podcast about our lived experience, which unfortunately includes infant death and subsequent mental health struggles. Please take good care of yourself and only listen if this content feels safe for you right now. We'll still be here when you're ready.
My name is Rob. I am Lila's dad. She was stillborn at 37 and a half weeks in December of 2017.
And I'm Jay. I'm Bella's dad. Bella was stillborn at a little over 40 weeks full term in January of 2017.
And I am Chris. I am Isabel's dad, and she was stillborn at 39 weeks in July of 2018.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. We are the Sad Dads Club.
Happy Father's Day, everyone. We really appreciate you all having us on the pod, and we're excited to take it over and share our stories. And guys, I kind of flippantly at the start of the show said Happy Father's Day to everyone, and I should know better at this point that Father's Day for many, fathers of lost fathers out there isn't a happy day, right? And I think it'd be helpful because my experience is different than both of yours in terms that we had our son Jack before we had Bella. So I was a father of a living child. All of my Father's Days have been of as a father of a living child. But both of you have experienced Father's Day as only as the fathers of the little angel babies, right? Can you talk about your experiences? Those that first, maybe second Father's Day after you lost Isabel, Chris, and Lila, Rob.
Sure. And Jay, it's a great question because obviously we don't know what stage of the process people are at when they're tuning into this podcast. And I can tell you, so we lost Isabel July of 2018. We were very fortunate in that we were able to get pregnant relatively fast after the loss. I say that my wife, Sarah, actually gave birth to two children. Now one stillborn, one living, in under a year. And I only point that out in the sense of Father's Day being in June. Our second daughter, Annabelle, who's about to turn 3 here coming up in July, we were very deep into that pregnancy when the first Father's Day came about. We were actually approaching the time frame of when we lost Isabel. So our first Father's Day after the loss of Isabel, we didn't really celebrate it, to be honest. And, to that extent, Mother's Day presented similar challenges in the sense that we didn't really know how to celebrate, right? Like you don't want to go out to brunch. You don't want to, I don't know. I guess I can only speak to my experience, but
which can make things tricky. Sorry to cut you off, Chris, but we all have fathers, right? We all have mothers, and those days are kind of tainted for us now. And so it's like that, for me, it was having a father-in-law too, it made it tricky to navigate. Sorry, I'm not super excited to be celebrating Father's Day with everyone, anyway, sorry, Chris.
Well, and to your point there, I mean, I'm going to focus on Father's Day because that's what we're talking about here. But to the extent I gave myself permission to feel that way, and I know that sounds weird, but in the immediacy of a loss, you almost have to be selfish is a bad word, but you almost have to be selfish to get through it, in the sense that as people have alluded to, I actually found 6 months and beyond to be trickier in a lot of ways than the days right after. And I don't mean the intense grief. I don't mean the physical pain of losing a child. That's obviously at its peak right when it happens. But the world stops understanding at what I found to be about 6 months. And Jay, you talked about it earlier. Rob, you hit on it earlier. I found the 6 month mark to be important in the sense that if you haven't gone through something like this, most people are like, it's time to move on, especially because we were pregnant. Like we heard a lot of, well, shouldn't you just be happy you're pregnant? Or shouldn't you just be looking forward to the next child? And it's like, well, how do you know the next child's going to be here? Like that's a very, very difficult and tough thing to say to somebody whose only experience is stillbirth. Um,
And for what it's worth, I mean, like even we had a, a happy, healthy, living child too, and like the subsequent pregnancies that Ellie had were incredibly difficult. Like it was so stressful. Um,
one of the things that the host said, I don't think we were recording this, but she said something that was amazing. Alina said it's the loss of innocence. And that is spot on. I have articles written about it. I plan on tackling the subject more. It is the perfect way to describe what happens next. You are acutely aware of things that can go on. Like when you reach 12 weeks, that's when people tend to post on social media, so and so coming such and such a month. And you hope for them, right? Like I'm not rooting against anyone. I want everyone to have a successful outcome there. But as a lost dad, you're sitting there thinking, God, I hope so. I hope I don't have to. Like we in a sense we didn't post on social media. My wife and I are not big social media people. Like my private Instagram, generally it's like one post a year, and it's on July 21st, which is the day we lost Isabel. 2 days before my own birthday, which I spend in a funeral home for that year. And you just hope that people aren't going to join the club, but inevitably people do. I mean, my college tennis teammate had a loss. I've reached out to both of you. I want to say it was only 8 or 9 months after we did. So you never know. I'm rambling now, Rob. So I'm gonna let somebody else take over here. But yeah, no. Go ahead.
Father's Day is a tricky one. I remember it was not easy for us to get pregnant with Lila, and it was even more difficult for us to get pregnant with Dallas, our living child, who is currently 2.5 years old. Our roommate. He. It's a funny way to put it. He like so I did not have that hope on my first Father's Day, and immediately following the loss of Lila, I got off social media, and I stayed off for 4 years. It was too triggering, just place in life. There were so many people celebrating and so many things that triggered and made me anxious. For example, as we were just discussing and talked about earlier, the pictures at 12 weeks with the little boards and the little shoes saying like baby girl, baby boy coming at this point. It's like, oh God, I hope it was like that, that's what we all think and hope and want and are led to believe will happen. But then innocence is lost when you go through something like this, and you're completely, entirely just no longer naive about the worst of the worst could happen. And that first Father's Day for me, I remember being entirely unexcited about the day leading up to it. And the actual day itself, I remember being so like, it was a dizzying day in the way that I was feeling, because even though I wasn't seeing anything on social media, even though I wasn't acknowledging other people in my lives, my father, I not that I wasn't acknowledging him, but I wasn't trying to celebrate the day at all. I didn't want to pay attention to the day, but I couldn't shake it. And it was a very weird thing, even though it wasn't right in front of me. It was just a day that I knew, and I knew that there was such a weight with it. And I ran the spectrum of emotions that day. It was like pissed off, resentful, sad, and then hopeful. And then it was like, I'm going to have a Father's Day one day. And I said that internally with such like a resounding confidence that I don't understand where it came from or where I found it, but I just like, I do remember thinking it. And maybe that was a kind of defense mechanism as my heart and soul were kind of, feeling so heavy and deep and just terribly sad, it was a way for me to bring myself back up and just not fall into this despair, and to say like, no, like you're gonna have that Father's Day that you always wanted. And I'm beyond fortunate to have that, especially having gone through the difficulty of getting pregnant when it didn't necessarily seem like that was going to be a possibility. That was a very, very real potential outcome for us, was not going to be able to have another child. And so even amidst all that, I just told myself that it wasn't going to be that way. And I'm under no delusion that that had anything to do with the scientific miracle and the outcome. But I think it's just what I had to do internally to really get myself through the day and not succumb to like a really just awful, terrible feelings, I should say, throughout that day.
Yeah. I don't, for better or for worse, I tend to block out terrible experiences and therefore like not learn from from the past, in terms of just like, I don't know, I should, react differently in whatever setting because that didn't work out that, well that time. But so I'm surprised that I remember this, but it just came back to me, Rob, like it was yesterday, texting with you like either on Father's Day or the day, like the weekend, the Friday or Saturday leading up to it, and just saying like, how are you doing? And like, like you're a father, right? And you kind of coming back and being like, yeah, but I'm not. And then you coming around, and like I could see you, through like three little dots, on the text on the screen, kind of like processing that and being like, yeah, and like kind of struggling with that feeling of like, yeah, I am a father, but I'm not the father that I, imagined being, of a living child on this planet. And I just, I think it's really important for anyone, out there listening to know that, yeah, if you've experienced loss, and, whatever the makeup is of your family, if you have other children or not, living children, you are a father. And we should be, inclusive. And I don't have the right terminology in terms of, non-gestational, parents or partners, people who have transitioned. But the Sad Dads Club, we're not all, we want to be inclusive of anyone, however you identify. And so the point is that, we just, you're a parent to your child, forever. And you don't have the luxury of, just going to brunch, or, going and playing golf, or whatever it is that, I don't know, suburban dads do, or whoever, on Father's Day. But, you're doing more, and going through more with your partner, or alone, or who, with, your family, but as a, a lost parent, than most people ever will. And that makes you a father, and very worthy of celebrating Father's Day in my book, although I fully recognize that it's a day of mixed emotions. And especially if you're in the immediate, days, weeks, months, or first year or so after, losing your child, to stillbirth, or however, I know that it's not something that is necessarily a joyous occasion, as Chris and Rob just described. But you know, um, we just want to know you to know you're no less of a father than anybody else. And it, this is hard. This is really, really hard. And there are these days and celebrations and holidays that are always going to be hard, and a little bit tainted moving forward. But they get better. It gets easier. Um, and I don't say this lightly, but I promise that there will be light and joy in your life again. Um, However that your family will be made up, whatever that structure looks like, you'll have joy. I used to describe myself as, it's like overinflated balloon bobbing around, like kind of bouncing off the ceiling, because I was just blissfully unaware, like, I don't know, Peter Pan or whatever, just nothing really bad had ever happened to me before losing Bella. And I'm not just some like deflated balloon now that like, has been like discarded, but I'm also never gonna, I hope I'll reach those highs that I had reached before, but I'm definitely floating around there. And I definitely think that like, if you were at a carnival, a kid would pick me out as the balloon, not just like the balloon that nobody wants. So like life does, in crazy ways, things get better.
To all of our wonderful new friends, we want to hear from you. Email us at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast. We'll get back to you as soon as our grieving brains allow. Yay!
I know.
Sorry, Alina and Judith. First of all, hi, I'm Jay. I am so sorry for your losses, and just really appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and appreciate you having us on the pod. So thank you.
We're so excited.
We are so excited.
Yeah, we're excited too.
I also just want you guys to know, my story is that my then husband, I don't know if you know this, came out to me as transgender a couple weeks before our son died. And yes, it was crazy. It was as crazy as it was.
Okay, so let's get started. I'm Judith, and I'm
wait, I have so many questions now.
Oh, sorry.
I feel like you can't just like drop that. Wait, are you still with your partner?
What?
No, they've been
we're divorcing. We're divorcing. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, but she's happily in love. You have to say she's got a new boyfriend.
I have a new boyfriend. Yes, we've been dating for 7 months.
And you know what's funny? He doesn't think that she has any red flags. Like he doesn't think like any of this is concerning. He like the dead son, the ex-partner. Like he just seems so okay.
He's very chill about all of it. Yeah. And I'll also say, like, I have like a weird perspective because I'm not still with like also a grieving parent. It's so nice to not be with a grieving parent. It's so hard to like grieve together. I'm sure you guys all know it's not easy.
The grief.
When did this all happen?
So my son died January 18th, 2021. And she came out January 8th.
Wow.
Total coincidence, just like out of nowhere. Yeah.
And how old was your son?
He would be 20 months. He was born September 2020. So he was 3 months and 27 days when he died.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, guys, it's not great.
We
we
all keep being like, we should be better at like this, but it's just like, like expressing sympathy, but like it's just so hard. Like I
always say I wouldn't recommend it. 0 to 5 stars. Don't
do you guys have other children?
I just had a daughter a month ago. No, 8 weeks ago.
8 weeks.
Congratulations.
I just had a daughter 8 weeks ago, yeah. But both of our sons were our first, which I think like having a live child just feels like so crazy because the only experience you had is of death. So it makes it, I think, like you lost the son or the daughter. You also lost this idea that like families happen. On the other hand, if you have a child already, like they lost their sibling too. So it's not just you're dealing with your partner who's experienced loss. You now have to manage, the grief experience of another existing child. So it's bad both the ways.
I mean, I texted Judith the other day. I was like, so babies just are born and then they live?
Yeah.
For a whole life? Like that seems impossible. And that's just what happens.
I heard that rumor.
It's surreal, like stuff. I very much, quite frankly, respect how quickly you guys have done this, and I mean that in the sense that like the strength for you guys putting this together and meeting. And I don't even know the full story about how you two met, and that might be for a time when we're not recording because I'm very interested.
We met on Reddit. That's the short story.
Well, you know what?
You guys are very interesting.
I read the podcast.
Very interesting.
I was like, where did you find
I have never met anyone on Reddit. I don't think I've ever really been on Reddit.
We met on Reddit, and then I asked her, I said, we met in June, so my son died in March, and we met in May, and I said, I think I should come meet you in person. Like, let's go to a cabin in the woods together. That was right here, but there was no reception, no Wi-Fi, no people. I was like, let's just go spend the weekend away. She was like, sure. And then I literally flew out like a week later, 2 weeks later, and we just went to the cabin in the woods. And
the rest is history.
And Alina, you didn't think Judith was like a crazy killer that you met on Reddit who wanted to bring you to an isolated cabin in the woods?
I should have been more worried about it. I should have been more worried about it than I was.
At that point, it would be like, great, like I'm halfway in this world, halfway in this.
Yeah, right.
Both of us were like, you know what? Murder me, whatever. Just put me out of my misery.
Pretty fearless at that point. You've endured what could possibly be.
I was about to say, you say like that, like half jokingly, but I get you might like just be like whatever.
Yeah,
I totally get that.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
No,
Also,
I mean,
pretty committed. Like you have to go on that murder plot. Like that's a lot of commitment. I'd have to come up with like a whole story, grieve every day.
There are people out there who do that.
I hope not.
On Reddit.
What a target.
Oh, maybe that niche, I don't know. But like I was alluding to the fact of the serial killers are like calculated, and at least I don't know any personally that I know
Lurking
of.
on the Sid's Lost groups of Reddit.
We're so appreciative of everything, being invited and everything you guys are doing. And
we're so glad you guys came.
I just can't believe you guys met on Reddit and then went to a cabin in the woods. Like,
how did you even use
I'm glad you're both still alive, and that like there wasn't another crazy axe murderer out in the woods when you guys were out there.
What's really amazing is that in these like grief worlds, you kind of get paired with odd ducks sometimes. Like not always is it a good match, you know. Sometimes just because you had a shared life experience does not mean that you would be friends in the normal world. And so I think really what's more impressive is that I met someone that I like actually genuinely get along with on Reddit. Like, not, you know,
we're soulmates.
We're soulmates that we met on Reddit. Not, you know, it could have been anyone.
Even Judith's husband is like, yeah, Alina is Judith's like grief soulmate. Like,
you know. All right, now I'm going to download Reddit and figure out how to use it.
To make your friends, to make new friends.
You don't have to download anything. It's called the internet. You go on Reddit.com.
Look up the stillbirth groups.
It's not an app? I just assumed it was an app.
I think there's an app for it.
There is an app, yeah.
Just like there's one for Google.